right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I have for you guys today, the Portugal Pro just wrapped up moments ago as far as men's open bodybuilding is concerned. So there's a couple things I want to talk about with the Portugal Pro, a.k.a. the Mr. Big Evolution Show. So Classic Physique. There was a lot of eyes on the Classic Physique category this year at this Portugal Pro. Obviously, these guys are trying to qualify for the Olympia. And a big name in that lineup, arguably one of the bigger names in this whole show, was Wesley Vissers. So Wesley was competing in Classic. And the placings here weren't exactly what people thought they were going to be. David Hoffman was also in this lineup, as well as Fabian Meyer, who's also a pretty big name. David Hoffman wound up in 6th. Fabian wound up in 5th place. Alex Dos Anjos wound up in 4th. And Wesley, not only did he not win the show, but he wound up in 3rd place. In 2nd place was a gentleman by the name of German Pastor, and 1st place was Jose Maria Mete, a.k.a. Made El Man on Instagram, who has a very, very classic physique. I really like Jose's physique, actually, so I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him winning this, actually. I don't think that was that controversial of a placing so much as Wesley taking 3rd. So honestly, from what I've seen from Wesley, the video that I saw, he actually looked pretty good to me. I do feel his conditioning was a little bit off the mark from where it needed to be, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good version of Wesley. I wouldn't say it was a bad showing for him. I actually think he looked pretty good. And for Wesley, I think he looked pretty on. And a couple things you'll notice that you don't typically see from Wesley, if you look at his legs, really good separation in the legs from the front. A lot of definition and a lot of detail in the legs, which typically tend to be a weak point for Wesley. He obviously improved the posing trunks, which a lot of people didn't like from the last Olympia. But everybody, wondering and asking, why did Wesley wind up placing where he did? I got to say, I just think it comes down to condition. I think Wesley, like I said, I don't think it was a bad showing, but I think he was a tad bit off, especially from some of the comparisons that I saw compared to the other guys. They were in pretty good shape. Admittedly, though, the lighting was a little bit weird at this show, but Jose Maria Mete, a.k.a. Made El Man on Instagram, he is the one who won this show, and he is going to the Olympia in Classic Physique. And we're going to see how he stacks up against the best in the world, the best of the best. I've thought for a long time that this guy was a really dangerous Classic guy. We're going to find out this year how he places in this lineup at the Olympia. I think it was a deserved victory for sure. I know having a big name like Wesley in there's probably a lot of people just, wondering why Wesley didn't win. But this guy that won, he's good. He's really good, and I think he deserved that victory. Now, as far as men's open bodybuilding was concerned at this show, not really any super crazy big names here. Now, the two names that got the most attention going into this were Andrei Presti and Tim Budashim, and both of those guys wound up taking the 2 top spots. In 1st place, you had Andrei Presti. He's going to the Olympia, and Tim Budashim taking 2nd. Andrei, for the record, is the guy in the middle in the black trunks, and then Tim is next to him in black trunks as well, not the guy in the green trunks. So those are your top 2. So like I said, it really wasn't the deepest lineup, so it wasn't really crazy high stakes at this show. This was kind of a this was a nice opportunity to get to the Olympia for maybe not as big of a name, you could say. So as far as a wrap-up of Portugal is concerned, those are really the 2 big things. A lot of people were expecting Wesley to win. He did not, so that's important. Wesley's not going to the Olympia yet. He's going to have to do another show. Will we see him in Chicago? Will we see him in Tampa? I guess, we'll have to see. But as of right now, Wesley's going to have to find another way to get there if he wants to get to the Olympia. Now, next up in the news, there's another show this weekend, the Republic of Texas show, and in men's physique news, you guys might be interested in this one. Andrei Deiu is going back to the Olympia by winning the Republic of Texas men's physique category, earning him his Olympia qualification. Of course, you guys know that Andrei has the same coach as Phil Heath, Hani Rambod, and many men's physique fans consider Andrei to be a future Mr. Olympia champion in that division, is certainly a top guy. So as far as contest news goes, that was a pretty big one this weekend. So shout out to Andrei Deiu and congratulations on the Olympia qualification. Now, also in Classic Physique news, there was this Tijuana Pro show this weekend, and winning Classic Physique was Mike Sommerfield, also known as Mike the Badass on Instagram. So Mike is going to the Olympia in Classic Physique. I believe he missed last year's Olympia. I believe it was due to COVID. But Mike's certainly an up-and-coming classic physique star, and he earned his Olympia qualification, so that will be another name added to the classic physique roster for the 2021 Mr. Olympia. So congratulations to Mike. Looking forward to seeing him at the Olympia. Now, next up in the news, a guest posing from Steve Kuclo, a guy that we have not really seen much from in terms of actually competing. I don't think we've seen him, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe since the last Arnold Classic was the last time that we saw Steve compete. Now, the next time that we'll see Steve compete is going to be this upcoming Arnold Classic in September. And remember, Steve was a top threat at that last Arnold Classic, surprisingly placing really high. He's a multiple-time Indy Pro champion, and he's looking to make a statement and get to the Olympia this year. He's not qualified for the Olympia yet. He's looking to do so at the Arnold Classic, and now we know. So now we know that the Arnold, you're only going to qualify if you win the show. So if that's the only show that Steve is doing and he doesn't win the Arnold, likely he won't be doing the Olympia, but he's a guy that we got to talk about doing the Arnold Classic. He's certainly a top threat to that lineup. But as far as the Olympia is concerned, it looks like he probably has his sights set on 2022, because even if he places and places well, the points that he'll earn at the Arnold are going to be for next year's Olympia, and there's going to be no opportunities after the Arnold to qualify for this year's Olympia. But Steve Kuclo actually looking pretty good at this point in his prep from the Arnold Classic, and we got this guest posing from, what show was this? Oh, okay, it was actually the Kuclo Classic. So we get a look for the first time at what Steve Kuclo is looking like, and I think he's actually looking pretty good. And again, I bring it up because Steve is a guy that I feel like people might be forgetting about or sleeping on because we haven't seen him in a while, but don't be surprised if Steve is in that first call-out at the Arnold Classic this year. Now, speaking of the Arnold Classic, another guy that's right there in the mix is Sergio Oliva Jr. He was right there in the mix with Steve Kuclo last time around. Sergio posting some physique updates, some training videos, some pictures and stuff on his Instagram story. He's one of the really big names going into this year's Arnold Classic, and he's a guy that, again, I'm really excited to see him compete. A lot of people might be sleeping on him because we haven't seen him compete in a while. He was unable to do the Chicago Pro. I'm assuming he's still unable to do the Tampa Pro. So unless he wins the Arnold, he's probably not going to do the 2021 Mr. Olympia. But Sergio is definitely a guy. I'm seeing these updates, and I'm really impressed by how Sergio is looking. Even when you compare him to Steve Kuclo, I think Sergio, he certainly looks like he might be in better shape than some of these other guys, because Sergio was originally prepping for a show like Chicago. He was already in shape. Now he's just kind of continuing that prep and continuing that shape. I think Sergio looks really good, and I'm really excited to see him compete at the Arnold this year as well. Now, the final story that I have for you guys today, supposedly this is like the only really recent video we've seen of Big Ramy. This is a newer sponsor that Big Ramy has. It's dated 2021. This is a photo shoot that he did, and I'm told this was like really recent, for KO Squad, which is, like I said, a newer sponsor. And it got me thinking, since Big Ramy won the Olympia last year, we've seen almost nothing from Big Ramy in terms of what his physique is looking like. We haven't really seen any training videos. We haven't seen any physique updates. We haven't really seen any posing videos. Now, I did actually see a couple interviews come out this past week or so, but really as Mr. Olympia, I feel like Big Ramy, we haven't really seen much from him at all. Am I, call me out on that if I'm crazy, but do you guys agree with that statement? I feel like we haven't really seen much from Big Ramy since he's won. I feel like we haven't really talked about him much since he's won because he hasn't put out much, but this is supposedly the most current version of Big Ramy's physique that we have seen going into this year's Mr. Olympia prep, where Ramy will attempt to defend that title. And as I usually do with the last story, I'll leave it to you guys. What do you guys think about Big Ramy's current shape, and what do you think the reason is that we haven't seen much from Big Ramy since he won the title? Let me know in the comment section down below. Give the video a thumbs up if you did in fact enjoy it. And please subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet already. As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.